Ask Mike, brought to you by the Stadium Shop on Razorback in Fayetteville.
Happy Monday, everybody. It's a Monday, which means Ask Mike is back for another week. We've got a lot of great questions, a lot of questions about the Cincinnati win.
We got new graphics, too. Fancy graphics.
And we have new graphics for you as well. So let's dive right into this week's show. Our first question is from Mousetown on Twitter. Were you surprised that the offensive line had trouble at times with Cincinnati's defensive line? That was pretty much an even battle. I thought we pushed them around more.
You know, that question, I think, reflects what, I wouldn't say a lot of Razorback fans, but some Razorback fans, their reaction after this game, which is, I think some Hog fans thought you were playing a mid-major team. I don't know why they thought that. Maybe they were aware of Cincinnati but felt like they'd really drop off after they lost all those players from last year. But there was a lot of pregame publicity about that. And we all talked about the fact that they're probably not going to drop off that much. And I think what I saw in that game was a very tough physical team. The offensive line, if you think they should have pushed them around more, well, let's look at some numbers. 224 yards on the ground. You average 5 yards a carry with your running game. That's average. That's a first down every other time you run with the football. That's something certainly every team wants with a running game. KJ Jefferson, they went after him a lot, but he ended up completing 70% of his passes, 223 yards, and he was sacked twice, but they had no quarterback hurries on him, and that's impressive to me that the offensive line, I think, protected him better than maybe we think. By comparison, Cincinnati's quarterback was sacked 3 times, and there were 4 quarterback hurries by Arkansas. So when you compare what went on there, I still think Arkansas's offensive line came off looking pretty good. And the fact of the matter is that you had a real even balance between running and passing, and you don't get those kind of numbers if the offensive line doesn't do its job. So again, I think the question reflects the fact that you thought maybe Cincinnati wasn't as good as they really are.
Which is still kind of wild because they were ranked, they were in the college football playoffs last year. The players all said they took them very seriously. I mean,
I just think some fans, not all of them, but some fans didn't.
Interesting. Well, S. Giles says, in the build-up to Saturday's game, you listed Trey Knox as one of your question marks. I guess he answered your questions, Mike.
Well, he had a really good game. There's no question about that. I mean, and he did it, though, catching the football. And if you go back to what I said, because you're sitting here when I say that stuff, I didn't say I had any questions about his ability to catch the football. My questions were his ability to block. And he did have killed one drive with a holding penalty. So he still needs to work on that. But the other thing that I talked about being worried about had less to do with him, and it had more to do with the overall tight end's room, because there's not a lot of depth there. You still need, Hudson Henry to step up, and he's not there. I don't know what's going on there. I didn't see him in the game. He might have gotten some snaps. So here's what I'm worried about with Trey Knox. If he's going to be your guy, you're going to put him out there all year long with very little backup. I worry about him wearing down, getting beat up, things like that. But no question, he had a great performance, great first game by him. And I wasn't so much questioning him, and certainly not his pass catching ability, but just his ability to transition to a blocker after putting on all that weight. I was concerned about his speed. And he answered that question. He may be the fastest tight end in the country. He caught that one pass and went about 40 yards down the sidelines. Yeah. And they were commenting, man, it's hard to believe a tight end has that kind of speed. So it's mostly good, just still a few questions, mainly about the tight end room itself, the whole position group, not necessarily him.
Do you think he is where he needs to be right now at tight end?
I just think they're probably telling him that the blocking is a work in progress. That's not easy. He gains 20, 25 pounds. That still doesn't mean he's a good matchup for some of these defensive ends. So he's got to continue to work on his technique. But I think he's fine. Again, I worry more about a lack of depth at that position. If you had just one linebacker, middle linebacker, or if you just had one slot receiver, or any position on the field you want to name, if you just had one guy that you could look at and say, yeah, he's it, I think you'd have a problem. So there's just a depth issue in that room right now.
Slobber Slob says, great game, glad we won, but the receivers were getting behind our secondary and wide open a lot. Were their receivers that fast, or does our secondary need a lot of work?
At least it's a good point. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we're all talking about the two injuries, the injury to Miles Slusher and the injury to Jalen Catalon, and saying that's why it dropped off in the second half. Because let's face it, Arkansas shut those guys out in the first half. But we all know that there were some guys wide open in the first half. He just didn't, the quarterback just didn't get it on target. No, now was that just the quarterback not being ready, or was there's some quarterback hurries? And if you go back and look, Arkansas's defense is pressuring him, so there's a reason why he made those overthrows. The other thing I want to mention is they were playing mostly zone man coverage and didn't look like they adjusted when those two guys went out. I do think this week they will adjust if they're not ready to come back. Now, just had a press conference up at the U of A, and Sam Pittman didn't really provide any more information on Miles Slusher or Jalen Catalon. He says, we don't know what we're dealing with them right now. So you're sitting here saying to yourself, is he just doesn't want to tell South Carolina if they're going to be available or not, or is there really an issue there? How would you know? So we're just in the dark on that. But I would say if they're not available, then you sit back and ask yourself what Spencer Rattler is going to do against Arkansas and how he's going to throw, and then you make a determination of whether or not you want to go to more zone coverage. But I trust Barry Odom's ability to adjust to that issue.
Yeah, for sure. We hope those guys are back, though, for the South Carolina game. We'll keep you updated on those injuries as we have more information. Alabama Hog with a similar question, though. He asked, do you think the secondary play will improve enough to hold South Carolina's quarterback at bay? Again,
with some people, you mentioned the name Spencer Rattler, and I don't want to do it, but they just, we had to face that guy. There's a reason why he's at South Carolina and not Oklahoma. He lost his job, so he got beat out. Now, I'm not saying he can't. He's a terrible quarterback, but he didn't have a good game against Georgia State. Got intercepted twice, had just one touchdown pass against them, and he ended up with a QB rating of like 26.5 or whatever. That's way below what South Carolina's quarterback had, or I'm sorry, Cincinnati's quarterback had against Arkansas. So it could well be that you're not going to be facing the same kind of passing attack that you did last week. So rather than go, we're going to face Spencer Rattler. He was at OU. How about, kind of going and looking at this guy a little bit and asking yourself, is this going to be a step up in terms of the quality of a passing attack that Arkansas secondary is going to have to face, or is it maybe a step down? We'll see. We will definitely see. Razor Boot asks, now that we beat a good Cincinnati team, what are the areas you see that we need to improve for the South Carolina Again,
game?
I'm going to come across as probably an excuse maker to some, but I try to be honest on this thing. If I thought there were a whole lot of issues, I'd say it. I looked at a lot of games over the weekend. Keep in mind, this is the first game of the season for most of these teams, and you typically have a lot of bonehead mistakes. Well, talk about bonehead mistakes. How about that Florida State LSU game on Sunday night? They were just loaded with bonehead mistakes by both teams, especially LSU. So if I'm Brian Kelly and I'm talking to my team and my coaches this week and talking about things we have to improve on, man, where do you stop? Not where do you start, where do you stop? There's just a few things I'd talk about with Arkansas. I think they average like 36 yards a punt. Come on, you got to do better than that. I mean, you're not. If they're gonna lose every time there's a punt exchange if they don't get more distance on the punts. So there's that. I don't know. Maybe the run blocking could have been a little better. I'm still not critical of those guys. Maybe the secondary could have done a little bit better job. So there are a few things to talk about. But when I look at that game from an Arkansas standpoint, and then I look at several other games that I watched, I see so many more problems with other teams that I look at that game against Cincinnati and knowing the quality of the opponent, and I just don't see that there's areas where you go, man, we got to get better at that. Boy, that was not good. We can't let that happen. The one bonehead move, because that's what I'm looking at those plays in different games, bonehead plays. Florida State has the ball on the 2-yard line. They're up by 7. There's 2.5 minutes to go, or less than.
Yeah.
There's less than that. It's a little over a minute, and all you have to do is not do anything stupid there, and you pitch the ball and fumble it and give it back to them, and then almost get beat because of that. That's a bonehead play. Okay, they had, I think he was a defensive end. One of their guys is doing a pass rush close to the red zone, and Florida State's quarterback gets the ball off. The guy clearly sees him get the ball off in his face. He doesn't just target him. It's not just targeting. I've never seen this before. It looked like a wrestling deal. He head-butted him.
Yeah.
He didn't touch him with his body. He just went doink,
Doink,
with his head and bounced his helmet and knocked the guy back. So now you've got targeting and you move them, and I think it was an incomplete pass. So that's a bonehead move.
Right.
And dropping 2 punts, that's bonehead. These are things that if they happen to Arkansas, you'd have fans just mad. What's wrong? The coaching staff doesn't know what it's doing. So the one bonehead thing that I saw, and it was sort of semi-bonehead, you had A.J. Green back on punt returns. Now, he's not getting a lot of reps at running back.
Right.
So he wants to be a part of the game. Most of the time, the kickoffs are out of the end zone. But here's one that's about 2 yards deep, and I'm sitting there looking, please don't run that out. Please do not run that out. And he runs it out, gets stopped around the 18, and then what? There's a holding call. So now you get backed up, and then you fumble. Those are bonehead things. And you shouldn't do that. But that's one thing that, what if he runs it out and runs it to midfield? So it's not just totally a dumb thing to do, but little bitty bonehead things, but not compared to boneheaded by
Glaring
LSU.
bonehead mistakes,
That's
right?
right. So I just don't see a lot of things where I would look at that and go, they got to correct this. This is really bad. It was just, to me, a good opening performance.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Hogapalooza wants to know, is it just me, or does it seem like Rocket Sanders doesn't like a lot of contact? I actually thought Green and the true freshman did a better job of getting to the line and getting upfield.
I didn't really notice that. I mean,
No, I didn't either.
What did he have, 117,
117 yards.
rushing, and he averaged 6 yards a carry? If you average 6 yards a carry, you've done your job. I thought DeBinion, the freshman running back, did come in and look pretty good.
He looked really
but
good.
I didn't see anything with Green that would indicate to me, but this guy's avoiding contact.
Well,
maybe
with
it was
Sanders,
just,
right?
Huh?
With Sanders, right? He didn't look like he was avoiding
Oh, I
contact.
said Green.
No,
I
you're
meant
good,
Rocket Sanders.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I look at him and I go, maybe he just got hit hard. I mean, if you're coming through the line of scrimmage and somebody knocks you backwards, that doesn't mean you're trying to avoid contact. It means you just got knocked backwards. So, but again, he averaged 6 yards a carry. That's way more than a first down every 2 carries. So
Yeah.
I didn't see that myself.
Yeah, I thought Rocket Sanders was great. I mean, it definitely helped out that, he stepped up when Dominique Johnson still hurt.
And you still got him coming. So
I know. I mean,
he
that's
may be back this week. So
you got to be happy if you're Jimmy Smith, right?
I just think they've got a lot of options at running back, and I don't see any of them that I look at one of them and say that's kind of a problem there.
No.
Maybe he doesn't need to be on the field.
Yeah.
I think you tend to do that as a fan when there are a lot of guys at a position, and maybe you start looking at because what's the old line? The backup's always better.
Yeah,
The
that's
backup
true.
guy is always better than the starter.
Always.
So maybe that's what it is.
Maybe. H. McCamish says the College Football Playoff Committee has finally approved, yes, a 12-team field for the national championship. When does it start, and how will those extra teams be picked?
Okay, we've got some graphics here so people can follow along. So, first of all, it could start as early as 2024. Can you believe that? That's 2 years from now. That would be great.
That'd be awesome.
Now, the 6th highest ranked conference championships, or champions, the 6 highest ranked conference champions will get automatic bids. The final 6 teams will be picked by the playoff committee. So that will continue the way it has been. Okay, the top 4 conference champions will get a bye into the first round. The other 8 teams will play a seeded format in the first round with the better seeded team in each game playing at home. That's important.
That is awesome.
The quarterfinal round will be incorporated into the current bowl system and therefore will be played at 4 bowl sites. And that's the way that's going to be seeded. Then the semifinal round will also be at a bowl site, and it will feature the Game 1 semifinal winner versus the Game 4 winner and the Game 2 winner versus the Game 3 winner, just like it would be in the NCAA tournament, basketball tournament. The championship game will continue to be played at a rotating site every year, and the most important thing, this format will now take 1 month to be finished from beginning to end. Now, some people are going, whoa, I love that. I've said for years, playoff games are better than regular season games. If you don't believe that, there's something wrong with you. Let's sit here and talk about high school football in our area. Let's pick the 7A West.
Okay.
And the 7A conference overall, and then the 7A West versus the Central. You got all these regular season games. But who doesn't think it's more exciting once you get into the playoffs?
It's much more
Well,
exciting.
I grew up in Texas, and I can tell you, yeah, the regular season was okay, but everybody got just fired up about you had to win 5 games in those years to win the state champion. And those 5 games that took place over a 5-week period were the biggest games of the year. Everybody loved it. If you can imagine the TV drama of every week, you go a little further. You know, you start off with the 12 teams, then you go down to 8, then you go down to 4, then you go down to 2, and then you have a champion. And these things are on TV, and everybody talks about it in between each week. It's going to build and build and build, and it's the way it's structured now. It kind of happens, and you got that first week. Okay, there's 4 games, and then boom, there it is.
It's done.
It's just too fast.
Yeah.
This will be much better. It will be more like the NCAA basketball tournament.
I love that. I mean, it's so exciting. How many years have we been asking for an expanded playoffs? I feel like.
And again, the argument you get from some people is there's only about 3 or 4 teams every year capable of winning it. That argument is going to get blown up once we have the 12 teams, because you're going to see teams upset other teams, and it's going to change the playoff form. It's going to change the way it looks once you start getting some upsets involved in there.
Exactly. It definitely will. Kind of just like March Madness. What would we call it? January Madness?
Whatever it is, December, January Madness.
January Madness.
I'm really looking forward to it. And if it happens in 2 years, that's great.
I mean, yeah, we could be up here in 2 years talking about Arkansas playing in a college football playoff.
That's right. It'd be great.
Crazy. Bacon's Rebellion wants to know, did the ESPN contract slip in some extra seconds for certain commercial breaks this year? Watching on TV, you have that biological clock running, and there seemed to be 1 extra spot. I saw this a lot on social media this weekend.
You know, I don't know about there being 1 extra spot. It seemed like to me there was about 2 extra minutes.
Really?
Look, here's what's going on, and this is a no-brainer. Teams these days are getting more and more money from network payoffs to conferences. I mean, the Big Ten just announced a $1 billion contract with they've got a CBS deal and some other stuff. SEC's going to get a better deal. You know they are.
Oh, of course.
More and more revenue every year is coming from your TV contracts as opposed to the traditional way you used to get revenue, which was your live gate and your contributions either to get season tickets or from your various foundations that raise money for these teams. So now it's just more and more on the money you're getting from TV. Well, where did the TV people get their money? They get it from selling commercial breaks. And so it's been very sneaky the way they've done it, but as the money has gone up over the years, guess what's happened? First thing they did was add commercial breaks. If you go back far enough, I can remember a time when it was unheard of to cut away for a series of commercials in between a possessions change. A team gets stopped, they have to punt, the other team gets the ball, they just run out on the field and continue. Now it's automatic. You know you better run to the refrigerator for 5 minutes because there's been a possession change. Mm-hmm. Now I watch a lot and I have volunteered 2 or 3 years ago. We always have to have somebody back here in the studio. And for instance, on Saturday, you guys couldn't get out there fast enough because the game ran so long that CJ and I had to sit out here and do the 6 o'clock sports.
Correct.
So that's why we have to stay back here. And I volunteered to do that. I still like going to basketball games at Bud Walton. I still like going to baseball games, but Reynolds Razorback, it's just a hassle. I'm too old for that stuff. It just
Many people were asking where you were this weekend. Did you know that?
Well, I don't know what they're thinking, because this will be about my 3rd or 4th year to do the studio thing.
Yeah.
And I like being in the studio for another reason too. You get to watch more games. I got one TV on Arkansas, but I got 2 more on other games.
Yeah, he has the full setup in here
and
going.
I love to watch all these games. So the point is, I watch a lot of games on TV. And I've just gotten used to this more and more. And it just seems like every year. Now, once they added the extra commercial breaks, where else can you add? You just make these breaks longer.
Yeah, you make them longer.
I remember when they were 2 minutes, then they got 3 minutes, then 4. And suddenly you've got a 3-hour game that's going 4.5 hours. I don't know where it stops. If they have to keep getting more and more money to give to these schools so they can build more facilities.
Yeah, they're going to start making halftimes longer is what they're going to do.
Halftime will be longer.
They're going to start.
You just know, okay, they punted. I'm going to go do something else for the next 10 minutes.
They might be like, that touchdown was sponsored by this guy, right? Yeah. I mean, they might start.
So I know what he's talking about, but I thought it was more than one extra break spot. It's like 2 or 3 more.
I saw it on social media. People were angry about how long these breaks were. So you might be right. It might have been 2 minutes long. We'll have to time it next week.
Yeah.
You might have to do that. Parallax Pig says, follow up to last week's discussion on the U of A building some type of multi-story parking deck with a grass top for tailgating. The U of A already has a large tree-covered area. It's called the Old Main Lawn. It would be a great place to tailgate. Why do you think the school administration is opposed to that?
I'm really not sure they are opposed to it. The ESPN game day was on the lawn of Old Main. Did you see them? Did you see any of that?
Yes, yeah, and it's huge.
That's
it was
where
great.
they were, and they had a lot of people out there tailgating. So I don't think they're opposed to it. Here's why I don't think that's the solution, why that can be Arkansas's version of the Grove. It's big enough, but there's very little parking. We're a block and a half away from that, right?
You have to walk. You have to walk.
Yeah, there's very little parking around that edge of that Old Main Lawn. So that's one issue. And then I think it's too far to the stadium. If you're going to have a good tailgating area, it's got to be like you just walk a little ways and you're at the stadium.
True.
That's like 4 or 5 blocks. So I still think the best answer is what we talked about last week. Take the north end zone lot, go down, make a parking lot under it, and then over it, you have an elevated tailgating area with grass and trees and all that. Go over Maple Street and go into the side of that hill. So you got all of that. Then go on the west side of Razorback Stadium, that elevated parking lot, do the same thing there. And there's a parking lot to the south of that.
There is.
And put one there. And then you've got a big, huge tailgating area all on the west side, and then build kind of overpasses over the street where you can cross over and still go to the stadium. So nobody has to get in the street.
I love that.
And the only problem with that is it would cost millions of dollars.
We talked about that last week.
They
it's
may not ever do it.
money.
But it would be cheaper to do it on the Old Main Lawn, but it would not be as convenient, and there would be a lot more parking over there.
You'd have to build a parking garage somewhere close or something.
Yeah, absolutely. If you did it on Old Main Lawn, you'd probably have to wipe out all of those sorority or fraternity buildings across the street and just build giant parking garages.
They're not going to do that, Mike. No. You know that. We had a question last week about why the athletic department doesn't do something about the ugly facade on the west side of the stadium. Arkansas 1 thinks there is a bigger problem on the west side. He says, what surprises me most is the absence of interest in fixing the nightmare congestion that exists uniquely under the west side stands. I'm surprised no one has been pushed over through the railings to the lower level. Wow.
Okay, you don't know what he's talking about unless you have those seats and you've been under there in that concession area.
Okay.
There are 2 levels. There's one on the ground all the way at the bottom. It's just congested. It's not big enough for people to move around, go to the restrooms, go back to their seat, and also deal with congestion. So the concession stand lines just cause all kinds of problems. But when you get up to that second level, there's iron railings around there, and you're about 25 feet above the area below. If you happen to actually get pushed over the edge of that, you drop about 20, 25. It's scary. I've been there in games. And I was trying to move from the press box down to the field level, so I had to go through that area.
You do.
And it's just very difficult.
And the elevators, it's crazy,
it's very
and it's
cramped.
wild.
So what is the solution to that? We're back talking millions of dollars. What you would have to do is you have to go underneath those west stands, and you would have to build steel support structures further back and go up and connect them. Once you got them connected, then you could take the current steel out. Then you could move everything back, the concession stands back, you could widen the concourse, you could widen those upper level elevated concourses, and you'd have more room. If you want to know the difference, go over to the east side. If I had to buy season tickets on the either sideline, even though the west side is the home sideline, I would take the east side every time, because underneath there's plenty of room.
Plenty of room.
And you don't have that scary upper level thing.
I sat there for the Garth Brooks concert, and there is, you have room to breathe, you can wait in line at the concession stand, you can go to the bathroom.
Other side is pitiful. And it's all a result of the way it was originally constructed. And this is the problem that a lot of schools run into. How many schools, you originally built a stadium, LSU Stadium. I don't know when they originally built that, but it had to be like 1910 or whatever.
Yeah,
and
long time.
It looks nice, but when you get around it and see what they did, they built over a dorm that's still there. It's really spooky looking. There's these dorms with windows underneath, and you're going, ooh. And so with Arkansas, they've got all these problems that you would have to fix, that they just left it where it is. But the only other solution to that would be to tear the whole place down and rebuild, and who does that? Baylor built a new stadium. I think San Diego State may have built a new one, but when they do that, they build them smaller.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
I wouldn't think that would be a good idea, to tear down what they've got. They spent too much money already on what they have, so they just, at some point in the future, that's going to have to be addressed.
And it is a nice stadium.
It's nice. It's just got some things that a lot of people don't see if you're not on the west side.
Oh, yeah.
I still think the facade is ugly.
Oh, it is ugly. Edward Clutch says, what is going on with the replica jerseys with players' names on the back? This was announced back in April or May, and here we are game week with them nowhere to be found.
Well, you can buy used jerseys, the ones that have already been worn by players. You can buy those. They're on sale, certain players. Now, what you have to understand is you can't just pick the name of a player out and automatically get a jersey, because the player has to participate in this. It's an NIL thing. So the player has to say, yeah, I guess I'll put my name in the hat, and if they sell X number of jerseys, I'll get some money off of it. So the player that you're wanting the jersey of has to be in the system. And so you can get, if the player you want is in the system and there's a used jersey that's for sale, you can do that. That's on sale now. I'm told that they're going to have some new jerseys available about mid-October. The problem is with Nike. Robert at the Stadium Shop, who sponsors this show, he's a merchandising guy.
Yeah.
And he's been telling me for a long time, the problem is with Nike, they just, I don't know what the issue there is, but they have been really slow in developing these jerseys. And I think some of it may be, you're trying to make money off this. So you're not going to make money if some guy likes the left tackle and wants a left tackle jersey, because what if they made up 12, 25 left tackle jerseys and put them in stores, and then they couldn't sell? You sold 4 of them.
Yeah.
So you're looking at the most popular jerseys, the ones that will really sell, and I think Nike's probably trying to figure out, what's the ratio here? What do we do? How do we decide what jersey to try and sell and what jersey not to sell? But apparently they're going to be available for Arkansas in mid-October,
October,
I think.
yeah.
But here's the thing. You can only order online, because you're going to order a specific jersey for a specific player, and it's going to be made for that. That's the solution they've come up with. They're not going to make a bunch of jerseys and then not sell them.
And not sell them, yeah.
So you're going to probably pay a premium price to have a custom-made jersey for the player you want. But if you're willing to do that and you think it's cool, you'll be able to order online sometime around mid-October, and then you get your favorite player.
Oh, there you go.
If that player participates.
Yeah, if they have signed the agreement as well. Alex for Hogs 88 wants to know, what is the story behind the red glow? When and how did it come to be a tradition?
Okay, that goes back to 2014 when they redid the scoreboard on the north end, and they were putting it up there, and they were trying to get it ready for the start of the season.
Okay.
And so they couldn't just work on it during the day. They had to keep going, and they started working on it at night too. So it was lit up at night.
Oh, cool.
And what people on the west side of Fayetteville started noticing was, when they had that thing lit up at night, you could see it all over the place. It looked like a big glow. and I think it was green. I think they were the screen color was green when they were working on it. I know that I came back from Van Buren. My mother-in-law lived in Van Buren, and my wife and I were coming back one night. We came over that hill looking back down over to Fayetteville, and we just saw this big green glow, and we're like, what is that? And the scoreboard itself was so far away, we didn't realize that's what was causing. We just didn't know what was going on. Well, apparently a lot of people thought it was the Northern Lights.
Wait, the Northern Lights?
Yeah, they thought it was some Aurora Borealis or whatever they call that. So
in Arkansas?
They just didn't know what it was.
I guess
so.
Okay.
The athletic department finally, they realized what was going on, and they noticed all these people reacting to it, and somebody came with the bright idea, hey, let's make that red. We'll have a red glow on Friday nights before a Saturday game, and it will be a tradition.
Smart.
However, there's a problem.
Oh, no.
And you guys,
oh, no.
we were sitting here, and Alyssa and DJ Williams were out going live on Friday night, what did we notice? What did I say?
Yeah.
I said, where's the stadium glow? Will lit it too hard. That's what I thought. Will lit the thing up too bright, and you can't see the background. That wasn't the case. What happens is people on that side of the town have complained because the lights are too bright. The glow is too bright. So they apparently have to turn those things off at 10 o'clock.
Oh, no.
So this was around 10:15, and the glow wasn't there. So I don't know.
Oh, that's
Everybody
a bummer.
likes the glow, but the people that live on that side of town don't want the glow after 10 o'clock.
I don't like that. Wait.
Shut your windows. You've got blinds on there. Pull them down.
Hey,
I think it should glow all night long.
We'll donate some blackout curtains to them. How about that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, donate some blackout curtains, and then you don't have to worry about that. Lost in Swine says, you've talked about the NCAA taking control of the NIL problem. Do you really think the NCAA would go near this topic matter after they got trounced in court, especially since they were the reason this whole thing got started?
Well, the NCAA doesn't have a choice, because here's the issue. There's a few schools that are kind of taking advantage of NIL and turning it into it's just cheating is what it is. They can call it what they want, but
those
that's what
collectives, right?
There's a few schools doing it the wrong way. There's a whole lot more that aren't willing to start that because they know where it's going to lead. So they're the ones that are making the push. Okay, we've got two basic NIL rules, so two things have to happen here. Number one, start enforcing the main rule, which is you can't offer NIL deals to high school athletes as a part of recruiting. You can only offer them a deal after they agree to come to your school. So enforce that rule. That's the number one thing they're talking about. Number two, they want a few more basic rules put in there. Not a lot, but a few. And basically what I think they're talking about here is to make sure that a NIL deal for a player is a real NIL deal. It's not some phony baloney way to throw money at them. So I've talked about this before. So if you're the quarterback and you're going to some used car dealer in Houston has 12 used car lots, and he's used to having some celebrity spokesman on promoting his, seeing these guys come on and talk about the car lot.
Yeah.
So you're used to having somebody do that, but let's say you're paying that person $50,000 for 6 months worth of commercials. If you come along and get a high school quarterback and come in and give him that deal and he's getting $500,000, no, that's not a legitimate NIL. That's just you throwing money at him and using him endorsing that used car lot as a way to just throw money at him. So I think they'll come up with ways to prevent that sort of thing and at least treat NIL what it's supposed to be, which is the NIL jerseys, for instance.
Yeah, it's a great way.
He mentioned getting trounced in court. A lot of people don't understand what the Supreme Court ruled. What they ruled is that the NCAA did not have the right to use the name, image, and likeness of players without their permission and not pay them and get it for themselves, which is what they did.
Right.
So all you have to do is avoid that, and you haven't violated that NIL rule. Just don't do that sort of thing. That would have been the simplest approach. But once you started giving NIL money to players, I don't think you can go back, but you have to make it legitimate. It has to be a legitimate exchange. If you're giving this guy money to do something, to promote something or whatever, it has to be a legitimate thing
like
that
the NCAA college video game.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a legitimate
way. If they
way.
got money off of that, you would get money for your name or your image or likeness being a part of that game.
Yeah, no, exactly. Wizard of Hogs says, You said you thought that Petrino may have gotten the Hogs to their only Sugar Bowl. Not exactly. It was their 6th, including the one that you covered, 1980 versus Alabama. The others were in 1962, 1963, 1969, and 1970.
Yeah, he got me. Every once in a while, I go completely brain dead, and I think it's my age, because my brain, as I get older, my mind becomes selective. Now,
no, you remember a lot, Mike.
I'm sitting here thinking, how can I forget about the 1970 Sugar Bowl? That was the consolation prize for losing the '69 shootout with Texas. So you have to go and play in the Sugar Bowl to Ole Miss, and Archie Manning versus, Bill Montgomery, and Archie wins. And I remember that. I was in college when it happened. I was really mad about it. So I remember that one. I do have a little bit of an excuse on the '80 Sugar Bowl, because yes, I was here. No, I did not cover it, because the CBS station I was working for was too cheap to send a sports crew. It wasn't this station.
Oh yeah.
So we sat at home, and so you kind of tend to forget about that a little bit. The thing I remember about it now is that Alabama clearly had more talent than Arkansas, which was weird, because that's just 2 years after the '77 Arkansas team, which was the most talented Razorback team I've ever seen. So that kind of showed me how far Arkansas had dropped off in 2 years under Lou Holtz in terms of recruiting. The guy could coach, he couldn't recruit, and it was already dropping off after 2 years. So that's what I remember about that. Don't have a real strong memory of the '69 Sugar Bowl, but Arkansas won that, and Bill Montgomery was the quarterback in that game. And then the 62-63 Sugar Bowls, I should have remembered those. I've talked about my buddy growing up in my little town of out west of Lubbock, and he was the only Razorback fan in town.
Yes.
He was madder than hell about both of those games, because he, to this day, hates the SEC.
Wow.
And Arkansas lost both of those games to SEC teams, and he was mad, and he's still mad at SEC teams. And what's really weird about this guy and me is that in those days when we were kids, I was a Texas Tech fan, he was an Arkansas fan. We've switched. He doesn't care about Arkansas much anymore, and I don't care that much about Texas Tech. It's still okay, and he's still okay about Arkansas, but he's more of a Texas Tech guy.
That's
but he's
very funny.
really, and I think Arkansas jumping to the SEC kind of, he always hated the SEC.
So then
and when they
he
jumped
said,
to
"Cut
the
ties."
he was like, what's Frank Broyles doing, Changed him.
I love that. Well, that is all the questions we have for this week's Ask Mike. Join us next Monday to hear the answers to your questions. We'll see you then.